Good morning. Today is the 19th day of First Adar and the 28th of February. We're up to the fourth reading of Parshat Tisa, and this is a very dramatic reading because here we got what, in the eyes of many people, is a turning point in the entire Torah. Although I don't see it that way. I see it as God continuing the same direction that he was on until now. This is the reading where we hear about Moses being invited to see God's backside. And exactly what that means is going to be our topic. What in the world could that mean? Because obviously God doesn't have a front side or a backside. It's some kind of image, some kind of metaphor for something. So what is happening here is that the people have sinned with the golden calf, and God wants there to be a change in the way that he governs his relationship with the people. And so he says to Moses, after he forgives them, he says, from now on, the relationship has to change. How is it going to change? He tells him in the third reading, yesterday's reading, I'm not going to be with you the way I was until now. And what does that mean? That I'm going to guide you with my backside, as it were. That's what he says to him. And Moses is very upset at this. And if you look at Exodus 33:15, Moses says, if your face, meaning your front side, is not coming with us, forget about it. Don't take us out of this place. We don't want to continue. We don't want to continue on our way to the land of Israel. And he says to him even more than that. If there's not going to be any difference between us and the rest of the world, then what is the point of this entire exercise? It's a very important statement, because what it's saying is that there has to be a different relationship between God's people and the rest of the world. Otherwise, you don't need a special people. You could continue to function. You could continue to work with things being how they are. And all the nations of the world hopefully will come to know God. But what's the point of having a special nation if you're not going to have a special relationship with them? And that's a very it's a very interesting argument that Moses is making. Is like, what Moses is saying is, it doesn't matter that you feel something special towards us, maybe because of our forefathers. What matters really is that the rest of the world has to see this. There has to be something that everybody can become aware of. And this is in a certain sense, that's the secret of everything of what Judaism is. That it's not just about the question of being able to change the world through the Torah. It's also that the world has to recognize that somebody has a special relationship with God in order to even be interested in hearing about the Torah. And we see time and time in history that this is what happens, that the relationship that the Jewish people have with God is what causes other nations to become interested, or other individuals to become interested in what's going on. So in the fourth reading, God says to him, I'm going to do what you asked me to do. And I will not just give you special treatment in that sense. V'niflinu ani v'amcha, we're going to be singled out in some way, different. But more than that, I know you by name. And what does it mean? I know you by name. I know your name. It's as if until now Moses is another person, and now God is saying to him, I know you by name, you're something different. You have a name up here. There's something about you that is different. Now, it's kind of strange to say that today, because today we teach all the time that everybody has a name. But you have to remember, 3,300 years ago, that was a tremendous breakthrough in human understanding, that Moses could even hear words like this, that you have a name. I know you by name. I know you as an individual, as it were. And so Moses uses this opportunity, and he says to God, again, this is 34:18, show me yourself. Show me, not yourself, God, obviously, but show me something that I can now say is a revelation of godliness that has never been seen. And God says, I'll pass all my goodness on you, and I will call in the name of God before you, and you will see my mercy. But then he says to Moses, you won't be able to see my front side, because nobody can see me and live. And then he gives him a solution. He says to Moses, I have a place in the cleft of the rock. Meaning, I have space there. It's as if Moses is now going to be in a special situation where he's going to be able to see something that no one's ever seen, to experience some kind of level of prophecy that no one ever has, but he will be shielded from it in some way. And it's a very interesting question. Like, what exactly needs to be shielded? It's now here in the Torah. He wrote it down in the end. So if the Torah is exactly what God said and did, then, so somebody would say, but it's the experience. It's not that simple. We understand the Torah to be the contracting of that experience into words. So if I would meditate, if I would contemplate these words long enough, I should get something of that experience. So the truth is that this is the direction the Kabbalah went in. That if you concentrate on these words, especially these words that God then speaks in tomorrow's reading, and we'll look at that maybe tomorrow a little bit, the 13 measures of compassion, as we call them. So meditating on those words actually does give an experience of God's mercy. So we still have to understand why God says to him, you can't see my front side. Isn't that what the whole thing was about? That he said, my front is not going to go, it's only going to be my backside. And then Moses says, show me your honor. And then he says, okay, I can show you, but only the backside. So isn't that the same thing? Then we go back to square one. So let's see how we can understand this. And I'm going to read from the article for today. Every Jewish soul contains a spark of Moses. As we said, every one of us can take these words and experience them. As written and explained in the Tanya, everyone has a spark of Moses in addition to their own unique individuality, and also in addition to their general comprehension of reality. Moses has a special level of prophecy that's called, this is the thing that God commanded. And this level of prophecy is called a translucent pane of glass, a spaklaria me'ira. What is a translucent pane of glass? It is written that it refers to Moses seeing reality from above, as if through the eyes of God from God's perspective. Now we can begin to understand what it means to see from the backside and not from the front side. We'll see in a moment a little bit more. There's a verse that says about Moses, and the picture of God he sees. This is in Numbers 12:8. It's a very difficult verse. He sees the picture of God. Utmunat Hashem yabit. How can one see God when it's written regarding even the giving of the Torah, you saw no form? We do not see a form. God has no form. What then does and the picture of God he sees mean? Rashi explains this refers to a view of the backside, as in what was said, and you shall see my backside. So Rashi tells us already that seeing the picture of God is seeing the backside. The difference would have been that the backside would have gone with God, and we'll see with the Jewish people, but they would have not been aware of it. But Moses here has become aware of it, and we have to understand that from now on, everything that's happening is like Moses seeing God's backside. How is this usually understood? What is this? What does it mean to see the backside? So let's delve a little bit deeper. When Moses requests to see the glory of God, God responds, "You shall see my backside, but my front side shall not be seen." This too is difficult to understand. What does a view of the backside mean? Does God have a front side or a backside? As Maimonides writes, he has no body nor the form of a body at all. So the Alter Rebbe, the founder of Chabad, explains that Moses was granted levels that no mortal has ever achieved. He was privileged to see reality from above to below. That's what it means to see the backside. To see it from God's perspective, to see the backside, is seeing it from above to below, as if through the eyes of God. Moses looks at the image of the world as God sees it. Seeing the world as God sees it, and this itself is called a view of the backside. God and the world, it is all one, but so to speak, how God looks at reality, this is referred to as God's backside. This is what is meant by, "and you shall see my backside." Regarding this, it is written, and the picture of God he sees. Thus, this is what it means that Moses merited seeing through his translucent pain. Now, granted, that still doesn't explain it fully. So the Zohar describes how Moses lamented that his request, "Please show me your glory," meaning the front side, the request to see actually the 50th gate of understanding, that's called his glory, was not fulfilled. And he was only allowed to see God's backside. And what is that? The way God's providence orchestrates reality. That's the backside. He sees that it's God running the show. That's what it means to see the world from God's perspective. That I see that the world is not just an array of random events. I see the reasoning behind it. What would the front side be? So that would be something else. It's got to be more. What does it mean to see the front side? So he says like this, that's what Moses was not shown. So the Zohar goes on to say that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai consoles Moses and tells him that although he did not see God's front side with his eyes, with the eye of understanding in your heart you can see everything, including God's front side. There are no limits. What's the difference? The difference is that Moses saw through prophecy. And Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is not a prophet, he's a sage. So he says, through the mind's eye and the heart, through that you can see even the front side. The power to see divinity is specifically related to the sphere of wisdom, because all the other spheres represent the way God's providence over reality functions. Thus, apart from wisdom, all the spheres reflect God's backside, meaning you're just seeing that it's Him running it, but you're not seeing the front side yet. Only with the inner aspect of the sphere of wisdom does the true one dwell in the person, revealing God's countenance. In the merit of this aspect of seeing the countenance in the sphere of wisdom, Moses was privileged to have his face shine, and man's wisdom makes his face shine. It's a verse from Proverbs. From Ecclesiastes 8:1. The inner dimension of the sphere of wisdom is the power of nullification, the faculty attributed especially to Moses, who said, "And we are not." So the uniqueness of seeing divinity in this manner follows a long and short path. We still haven't said what the front side is, because all Moses ever saw was the backside. So what could we say about it? Well, what we can say now is that it's a process. With prophecy, you can't get there. That's basically what God is saying to Moses. Prophecy is not the vehicle with which you can see my front side. To be able to see my front side, you have to engage in psychological work called self-nullification. That's the inner quality of wisdom. And, more importantly, you have to engage in Torah. When these two things come together, it's called the longer, shorter path. It's called the longer, shorter path of seeing God. I can see God through my contemplation, but I can't see Him through prophecy. This is saying that there's a limit even on prophecy. Prophecy can only go so far. And this becomes a very important topic in Hasidic thought. And there's an entire epistle in the Tanya that's dedicated to explaining how is it possible that Rabbi Isaac Luria knew more about the Kabbalistic world than Moses did. Because the difference was that Moses was doing it through prophecy, and Rabbi Isaac Luria was doing it through contemplation. What's the difference between them? That even though contemplation, intellectual contemplation, can take you higher, the experience is weaker. The experience through prophecy is much more powerful. It's more real. And again, we're still left with the question of what does the front side actually mean? And God willing, at some future opportunity, we may discuss this a little bit more. Thanks for joining today. All the best.